One of my favorite aspects about searching for lost media comes from the fact that you never know what you're going to find. I think most people's interpretation of lost media is simply a lost cartoon pilot or a lost episode of a cartoon that fell through the cracks and cannot be viewed. However, it's so much more than that. Over the past 6 years, I found some really crazy lost content that I didn't even know existed, including the likes of a Hannah Montana anime series that Toei Animation was slated to make, and a bootleg Filipino Batman film that was completely unlicensed and might be lost to time due to its age. Today's topic is really strange in the fact that it exists at all, but it does, and it's shrouded in so much mystery. So let's begin our search for the lost Big Comfy Couch Xbox game. Yes, you heard that right, the Big Comfy Couch was going to get an Xbox game. For those who aren't aware, the Big Comfy Couch was a Canadian television show that aired all throughout the 90s and mid-2000s on YTV and Treehouse TV in Canada and PBS Kids here in the US. Since I was really young at the time, I only vaguely remember it, but can recall some characters including Lunette, her doll Molly, and the Dust Bunnies. Now the show was a big success and eventually led to merchandising like toys and whatnot, but could you have guessed that an Xbox game was being made based on this franchise? It was supposed to be an action-packed adventure game, and we can get a little insight about this planned project according to an article from Unseen64, a website that archives cancelled and lost games. Now this article is dated all the way back to 2011, so nearly a decade ago. It says, "The game doesn't appear to have been documented at all, and that maybe the developers decided it was better that no traces of the game were ever made public." It then goes on to state that very little information is known other than the assumption that it would loosely be based on its source material and takes the player in solving various dilemmas. However, the most important aspect to note is the inclusion of 3 screenshots that were shared by one of the developers. The first screenshot depicts Lunette running through a field tasked with popping all the balloons and piñatas. Some notable aspects of this image are the health bar, map, and icon of Lunette herself. The second one involves a battle arena where Lunette fights a horde of dust bunnies, a recurring character from the show. They're equipped with their own health bar and some kind of counter that can be seen more clearly next to the map. But most infamously, they have what appear to be bloodstains underneath their model. And finally, the third displays a title screen with some text that implies the game would be able to go online and play co-op. Now I'm sure at this point in the video, you're asking yourself, why does the game look so rough? It's very messy, there's a lot of objects all over the place, and of course the dust bunny blood. The reason for that is because the game was very much still in development when these screenshots were taken, and pretty much all the information I've already said is all that's in the Unseen64 article. There's not really much else to know about it. And it stayed that way for 7 years, until in 2018, this topic found its way to the Lost Media Wiki forums. User Canadian Childhood had come across the article and wanted to form a search around it, trying to gather more traces and answers about the game, beginning what we would consider the modern era of the search. Now earlier on in the search, we weren't really looking actually into the game or into the development of it or who may have made it. We were actually just scrutinizing the images that were available and weren't even sure if they were legit. Vamp1597 points out that Lunette fighting dust bunnies would be very bizarre for the presumed age demographic and couldn't find proof of other Big Comfy Couch games existing, despite some rumors that float around. Happy Brian even goes as far to say that Unseen64 got fooled and were sent hoaxed images by someone who wanted to troll them. So my theory at this time was kind of a combination of the two, not that it was fake but not that it was official, more of like an unofficial test pitch. This can be seen with games like Mario Kart XXL and Resident Evil 2 on Game Boy Advance. But of course, this is lost media and we can't just speculate on the whole thing, we gotta get some answers and make some contacts. So the first thing I wanted to do was contact Unseen64 themselves and inquire directly about the images in the article. Unseen64 does a really good job of keeping track of their emails because I did get a reply with more information. Monokomo was the one who responded to my email and stated, "I can confirm we received those images from a developer who wanted to remain anonymous." He used a random email. Who also sent us some screenshots from another cancelled Xbox game titled Power Rangers Legacy. Unfortunately at the time, I did not ask them which team was working on those games. I was a fool. Maybe there's something more online that could be found. This actually opened up a whole new lead for us through the Power Rangers game. So the difference here is that the Big Comfy Couch has no history with games. Like the fact that this one even exists at all is a really weird anomaly. However, Power Rangers has had a rich history with games, with developers attached and companies and things like that, and according to Unseen64, Power Rangers Legacy and Big Comfy Couch were both being developed at the same time by the same developer. So if we could get information for Power Rangers Legacy, that would mean we would also be getting information for Big Comfy Couch, which would be much easier because of that fact that Power Rangers is much more popular. However, we didn't have any Power Rangers Legacy screenshots. They had never been posted online. So I went back to the email thread and asked Monokoma if they could send me the screenshots, which they did. These screenshots were very similar to the style of the Big Comfy Couch ones and appeared in a nearly identical way, with basic text, a messy interface, and questionable material as the battle text states to clean the bathrooms. There's also a health bar for an enemy named Z Poopy. While we were picking apart these images to the best of our ability, Canadian Childhood made a point that THQ was publishing Power Rangers games in the early 2000s during the original Xbox's lifespan. At long last, we finally had our first working objective: find and contact THQ employees from the early 2000s who might have had a hand in Power Rangers games from the era, with the theory being that they might have had a hand in the cancelled Power Rangers Legacy game. From here, Dog Polygon RT66 and Echo Fox went through the credits of many THQ Power Rangers games from the era and compiled a list of employees whose names appear frequently in the credits. This suggests they might have had a hand in Legacy's development, despite it never releasing, and could be contacted for more information. Of all the names we pulled from the credits, there was one in particular that stood out more than the others: Allison, the brand manager at THQ between 1995 and 2005. This was exactly in the time frame we were looking for because we knew the games were planned to be released on the original Xbox. So I sent Allison a message with the images of Power Rangers Legacy attached, hoping she would be able to provide any kind of insight about the game or its development or anything like that. But unfortunately, I got an email back that stated she didn't work on the game, she didn't know anything about it, and that THQ didn't even have the Power Rangers license at that time. It was actually Disney that owned the brand in the mid-2000s, which completely threw THQ out of our theory and means they didn't have any involvement with the game. Unfortunately, as our THQ theory kind of fell apart, so did the interest in the search, and we didn't really talk a whole lot on the actual Lost Media Wiki thread because at that point we had actually moved to the Discord channel on the Hunt 3, which focused directly on the search for this game. This actually maybe helped us quite a bit from moving it off the forums and into the Discord because so many new people were looking at it that new theories and new ideas were popping up. From that point, our general consensus was that the Power Rangers Legacy screenshots used a lot of assets that looked visually similar to games that were developed by Behavior Interactive. Considering THQ was completely out of the mix at this point, to pick up Behavior Interactive felt kind of like a blessing in disguise that we were actually back on track with a new developer. Needless to say, I wasted no time reaching out to Behavior Interactive employees, animators, 3D visual effects artists, all kinds of people from the early to mid 2000s, even a couple in the late 2000s. I sent them all messages with screenshots of the game attached, and I heard nothing back. And that was like a couple months ago. At this point, I'm not really expecting to hear anything back. And what was interesting too is that most of them actually had their DMs closed on Twitter. So I'm guessing that these employees are sort of private people. They probably don't really talk about the game that they develop very much. Maybe they can't because of NDAs, who knows? But it just seemed like we probably were not going to get a reply back from them, which kind of left Behavior like just in limbo. So the search was kind of at a standstill. We didn't really know where to go from there until a few users suggested that there might have been more information in those Unseen64 emails that would be worth looking over, because at that point, the information I was receiving from Monokoma was just what they were telling me. We didn't have the actual emails that the anonymous developer had sent to them a decade ago. So we decided to go back to Unseen64, and I emailed Monokoma again and asked if there was any other details they might have missed, anything that might be useful, anything that we could use as a lead here, because we were kind of out of options at this point. Thankfully, they actually did have a minor detail that they forgot to mention. according to the anonymous email that was sent to them 10 years ago, a name was dropped regarding a developer who worked on Big Comfy Couch and Power Rangers Legacy. That name was Chris Tang, most famously associated with Primal Rage 2. I was a little confused about that because I didn't really know who Chris Tang was or anything like that, so I went back to the Discord server to tell everyone that Chris Tang was apparently associated with the Big Comfy Couch, and that's when the gears kind of started to turn. We were starting to put the pieces together. If you look in one of the screenshots of the Power Rangers Legacy game, there's an icon and text that says Zenny. Now the Zenny is a form of in-game currency seen throughout many Capcom games, including Mega Man and Street Fighter. Now Chris Tang himself worked at Capcom in the late 90s and early 2000s. Putting those two pieces together, we theorized that Big Comfy Couch was being made at Capcom with Chris Tang helping develop it. I was pretty content that that was the mystery. We had solved it. It was Capcom and Chris Tang. However, that wasn't the end of the mystery. WoW Now historian had looked a little bit further into Chris Tang and found out in the early 2000s he had actually been known to work alongside another person named Eric Suzuki, and together the two of them worked at a company called Gen Azia. So you might be wondering, what does this have to do with Big Comfy Couch? Believe it or not, Eric Suzuki, who Chris Tang is affiliated with, was actually married to Allison Court, the actress who played Lunette on the Big Comfy Couch. So right there's one connection. But secondly, we thought to reach out to Allison on Twitter and ask if she had heard about the game or what she thought about it. And she confirmed with us that yes, the game did exist, but also that the game was being developed by a developer who was not very memorable and later went defunct. Now, Capcom is still around and is pretty memorable, but Gen Azia isn't. And the fact that they're not well known at all falls exactly along the lines of what Allison had said. So this is our current theory, that Chris Tang, along with Eric Suzuki and possibly Allison Court, all had an influence in working on the Big Comfy Couch game in the early 2000s under the game company Gen Azia. After we put together this new theory, we wasted no time finding some former employees who had worked at Gen Azia during the early 2000s, and we contacted a few of them. We're still waiting on replies and even trying to just reach out to more of them. So that's a heck of a lot more than we knew at the beginning of this search, and I'm really excited that everything kind of fell into place so well. One final point to make mention of is in the original email from the anonymous sender, they claim that they own a prototype of Power Rangers Legacy and they were trying to sell it to a collector at the time. It's unknown whether or not this sale ever took place, and I couldn't find anything online that made mention of it. However, it's interesting to consider that a Big Comfy Couch prototype might still exist. Even though our THQ theory was incorrect and our Capcom theory was incorrect, ultimately we ended up exactly where we needed to be with kind of putting all the pieces together for all these people and how everything is all connected to each other. Not to mention the fact that they were shrouded in so much mystery ever since the early 2000s when they were first developed. Thanks for watching, and hopefully the mystery of the Big Comfy Couch game will remain a mystery no longer. Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. Be sure to check out some of my other game-related Lost Media videos. Thanks for watching, and until next time, Finn.